So glad to see so many faces. My name is Jessica Beck. I'm a director here at Gagosian, and we're so pleased to have these great speakers tonight, Sophia Heriveaux and Roger Guenveur Smith. Sophia Heriveaux is a film producer, writer, and director, and holds a BFA from NYU's Tisch School of the Arts. Sophia made her directorial debut with the documentary series for the Jean-Michel Basquiat King Pleasure exhibition, which originated in New York and traveled to Los Angeles in 2022. In conjunction with the estate of Jean-Michel Basquiat, Sophia has also directed work for the 2021 exhibition Jean Dubuffet, Brutal Beauty, at the Barbican in London, and Basquiat and Warhol Paintings for Hands at the Fondation Louis Vuitton in Paris. In 2019, she worked briefly at Miramax's production and development department. Her film production work has taken her to South Africa, France, China, Ethiopia, and Canada. Currently, her directed short film, Good Jazz, Back to You, is in post-production, and her next produced feature film, Baby Did a Bad Thing, is set to shoot in 2025 in France. Roger Guenveur Smith, yes, round of applause, is a native of Los Angeles and studied at Occidental College and Yale University and has taught at both institutions as well as Cal Arts. As a writer, actor, and director, his solo projects include the acclaimed A Huey P. Newton Story and a portrait of Charles White, which he performed in 2019 in conjunction with a Charles White retrospective at LACMA. As a longtime colleague and collaborator of Spike Lee, Roger created and performed the Basquiat-inspired character Smiley for Lee's 1989 film Do the Right Thing. Roger performed his one-man solo show in honor of Jean-Michel Basquiat in conjunction with the Basquiat retrospective at the Brooklyn Museum and MoCA in 2005, and again in Los Angeles at the Bootleg Theater in 2010. He was one of Basquiat's trusted collaborators and spent time with him in his Venice studio, and his improvised monologues were incorporated in the artist's work. Most recently, he recorded with Michael Holman and Nicholas Taylor, Basquiat's bandmates, who together founded in 1979 the experimental band Grey. Thank you all for joining us this evening for this final week of this historic show, and I can think of no better way than to wrap up this extraordinary journey than these two great speakers, so a round of applause, and we're in for something fascinating.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Jessica. That was a really beautiful intro. I am Sophia, and this is my wonderful friend, Roger. We're excited to chat today. There's a lot to talk about, so I won't have a large intro. But where I would like to begin is kind of just jumping in and talking about how Jean-Michel had his sort of like debut experience in Los Angeles in 1982, in the fall. He was here for 18 months, and particularly if you've been through the galleries, you know that he had quite a stint here and made a lot of friends and was quite a head that was buzzing around clubs and exhibition openings and stores and kind of everywhere, you know, big figure of media. Now, he was also a huge movie junkie. He had a huge collection, and that is one thread that connects me and Roger. And in that fall of 1982, when he was first here in LA, he and Roger first meet. So, I would like to ask you, Roger, when that first meeting came, you went to visit the cinema and watch Martin Scorsese's King of Comedy. Can you tell me about that experience? And can you particularly tell me what sort of 21-year-old Jean-Michel was at the time? Was he introspective? Was he impulsive? Was he mature? Was he passive? Was he calm?
I think he was all those things. I think he had extraordinary energy, and I think that he was attracted to my energy. In fact, the first thing that he said to me is, "I really like your energy." And then he asked, "You want to go to the movies?" And I said, "Sure." And so the next night we went to see King of Comedy, which was premiering that weekend. And we were a little late, so we sat in the back, in the balcony in Westwood. And we were right in front of the projector. And when we walked in, the projector projected Jean-Michel's dreadlocks in silhouette onto the screen. And everyone thought that was kind of funny. And he would, intermittently stand up during the show. But I didn't really have any idea that your uncle was a greatly ascendant art star. I thought he was a wonderfully energetic cat from New York. And it became clear to me, slowly, that this was a guy who was on the move, who was trying to create some work that people would still be talking about in the year 2024.
I'm curious, I remember that you say that was not his persona, this kind of chic individual who was incredibly intertextual and, multicultural in many facets. That hadn't hit you quite yet. So what was that moment? How did it evolve to the point where you guys were eventually making art together?
Well, first, I took him to the barber because he really liked my haircut. I had kind of a Grace Jones flat top thing happening. And so he wanted to do that for himself. My barber at that time was a guy named Dudley, and he was from Jamaica. And in fact, his barbershop was on Adams near La Brea, and it was called the Jamaican Barbershop. And Dudley was a brown-skinned brother from Jamaica, but he had straight black hair because some of his folks were from the East Indies. He was an East Indian, West Indian. And it upset Jean when he first saw him because he thought that his hair had been chemically processed. And that was, that was really disturbing to him, that I would bring him to get a haircut at this dude who had a conch, right? And then Dudley was looking at him saying, "Man, what can I do with this? Dreadlocks, man." So they found a way of communicating eventually, and zzz, that was one side. Next side, zzz, and Jean just said, "Leave it full on top, leave it full on top," and threw a $20 bill at him and walked out. And you would think that, he would always hold that against me. But if you look at pictures of Jean, that's essentially the way that he wore his hair for the rest of his life. So we had to negotiate some of that. He invited me very generously into his studio where he was working, primarily on the floor. And in fact, if you look at some of these paintings, you will see footprints on them because he's going back and forth on top of the canvas. And I would do my thing. What to the American slave is your 4th of July? I answer, a day that reveals to him more than all other days in the year, the gross injustice and cruelty to which he is the constant victim. Say that again, constant victim. Say that again, constant victim. Say that again, constant victim. Frederick Douglass. That became incorporated into Jean's work. It was a very generous invitation to collaborate with him. And we found a lot of commonalities.
I think that it's fascinating that you two, even connecting to the story that you just mentioned, that you two had these shared interests in history and literature, basically like all different types of media and knowledge. Especially in your, like both of you read Encyclopedia Britannica for fun growing up, right? I'm curious, like, how close did you two have to become to start riffing this way? Like, was there a moment when you guys were still in that awkward stranger acquaintance phase and that sort of bonded the two of you, or did it take some time for him to get you into the studio? And
no, I think that we had to learn to trust each other. I think that we had to learn, who we were to each other. My people are from Haiti, the Guenveurs. Your people are from Haiti, the Basquiats.
Sure are.
And we knew that we had that connection, but we were also connected through Mark Twain. Because when I was in 8th grade, I would go all over LA reciting the first 15 pages of Tom Sawyer by Mark Twain. And in the great Radiant Child documentary done by Tamara Davis, she asked, well, what do you read? And he says, Mark Twain. So that was a very odd kind of connection through Twain and through an absorption of history. An absorption of history. I mean, here you have one of his great paintings, Hollywood Africans, where he went with his friends Toxic and Ram LZ to Grauman's Chinese theater and saw the handprints and the footprints in the concrete there. Obviously, a seminal moment for Jean, and he chose to document it.
Well, he thought it was ironic that he talked about how he felt like the three of them were sort of the only black guys in all of Hollywood and all of Los Angeles, and so he found that especially all of these names, he felt it was striking that he didn't really see that many black names, and they wanted to ascend to the same sort of heights and fame and sort of audacious living that the people in amongst those stars were living. I think that says a lot about the type of legacy that all three of them have continued past their deaths. It's interesting now that to look back on this time, and especially for me, as I've spent much more time in Los Angeles and gotten to really know the figures that Jean-Michel knew when he was in Los Angeles, how pivotal of a place this was for him. How much work he got done here, how much of not a different persona, but like a new energy that he seemed to forge through the streets and through the circles of people that he was around here.
The Los Angeles that he stepped into was a rich Los Angeles.
Yeah.
The Los Angeles of Dexter Gordon, the Los Angeles of Odetta, the LA, right, of Charles White. All of these people, these movements, Horace Tapscott and the Pan-African People's Orchestra. Jean moved into this world, I'm not going to say with ease, but I will say with comfort. He was here with Noah Purifoy. Have you been to Purifoy's museum in the desert? Go. extraordinary.
Can I ask you as well, like, as a voracious consumer of media, what was it like to experience Jean-Michel when he was truly activated, like in his artist mode? Because I think that he was picky about who he let in the studio.
Come on, it's choreographic, right? It's choreographic.
Tamara captured that really well in her footage.
Yeah.
I'm referring to the director, Tamara Davis. She has boxes upon boxes and
But there's a clip in the other room from it.
In the corner of that moment. So I also want to ask you. So again, you guys were friends. You guys met kind of serendipitously, kind of in these humble ways. You connected through these movies, particularly as like two young black individuals who seemed to be having fun and laughing a ton.
We were, but we were learning.
Exactly.
We were sometimes earning.
Yeah.
My nickname was Holly Watts, because that's where I grew up, halfway in between the two mythologies, Hollywood and Watts. First you say Hollywood and then you say Watts. Put them both together, then what do you got? You got Holly Watts. Yo, baby, that's me, rapping on the mic since 1983.
So...
But John encouraged me to embrace the Guenveur in me, right? And to move forward, not as a representative of mythology, but as somebody who's really trying to get to some brutal reality.
Okay, so this guy, I think, had a lot of audacity in a lot of ways, particularly through his paintings. He seemed to like funnel everything through them. I ask people a lot of questions. I'm quite an inquisitive girl, particularly about Jean-Michel, and one of the questions that I often ask individuals who knew him well is who did he bring his deepest emotions to? Like, who did he come to when he was feeling deeply broken, deeply embarrassed, etc. And, you know, there's a lot of different answers that culminate, but the answer that seems to be really, really, really prevalent is that the paintings seem to kind of be his best friend, like his truly best friend. Just in connection to the story that you just told, it feels like a moment where he kind of exited the prism of embedding his emotions into the paintings and let them out in real personhood. Into the real world. And so what I'm that audacity, that spirit, that passion, particularly about something that is so blatant in the works that he creates, like what does that, was that clear to you in the moment that you guys were out in this dance club together?
Well, and beyond, because I think that he was consistently stimulated, whether it was books or films, or certainly music that was nonstop in his studio. He absorbed the world in a very deep way. And I think that enabled him to create what we're looking at right now.
There are so many different points that I want to touch on. Some that we've passed, like about that recording, and some that are new. So let me know if you want to go back or forward. But I am curious about Jean-Michel's whereabouts. So we have this this map. This is from King Pleasure, which I helped out with, that my family did. These dots describe different locations that he frequented. So there are a few in West Hollywood, but Mr. Roger, I'm curious if you, the galleries, the restaurants, the stores. Where was he a regular? Where did you guys?
Power tools. Anybody in here old enough? You admit being that old? You're old. It's at the Park Plaza Hotel, an amazing club right on MacArthur Park. And just a couple blocks from there, a place called City Space, which I founded.
Did Jean-Michel ever have a chance to attend any of your formal performances as an actor?
I mean, my formal performances were
In
in large measure on the nightclub stage as Holly Watts. Now, at the same time, I was doing some Genet, some Shakespeare, some Chekhov, in the early evening as Roger Guenveur Smith. And in the start of the day, I was Mr. Smith because I was teaching English at Hollywood High School. So I was wearing these three, different hats
And you two recorded
on the same day.
You had a studio session together, right?
We did, and who knows where that went. Because we sat up in the studio and recorded, and he had a dub track for me, and I did my thing.
Again, if anybody has pointers on where this track could be.
But of course, we felt that we were going to live forever, and that we didn't necessarily need to hold on to any of this stuff.
So obviously Jean-Michel was primarily based in New York. You were primarily based in Los Angeles, but you guys connected in both places. How did your exchanges in New York differ from your exchanges in LA, if at all?
Well, the New York scene is a little different from LA. It was more of for me, more of a wilderness.
It's still that way?
Yeah, more of a wilderness. This is, home for me, Holly Watts. But what happened at the end of that decade brought us together in a very strange way. Because I improvised a character in Spike Lee's Do the Right Thing called Smiley. And Smiley tried to sell postcards of Malcolm X shaking hands with Martin Luther King, which he personally colorized. And eventually he burned the pizza parlor down, including the photograph of Sophia Loren, which is your given name. And when I was doing that film was exactly the time when we lost him, just on the other side of the river. So we found a strange dynamic, which is playing out on that screen right now.
Yeah, this is the two
right
of
here
them.
at Gagosian. There's the two of us back there somewhere. He's the one with the dreadlocks. I'm the other one. To meet you, Sophia, has been an extraordinarily moving experience. And you're 22, and you're essentially the same age that he was when we met. And you look a lot like him. And to know that you were born way after he died, but obviously with a distinct curiosity about your uncle, a distinct love for him and for all of your extended family. To be able to experience that in this sacred space is truly a blessing. I thank you for inviting me to be in conversation with you, and to be in continued conversation with your uncle.
It's my absolute pleasure, Roger. You are precious. I have a true, particularly when I was 15, 16, I just had this like struck fascination with learning everything I could, like literally gobbling up as much as I could about Jean-Michel and trying to get to know anybody who had like any slim encounter. Like, I saw him at the grocery store. Really? Tell me about that. And
Dean and DeLuca, probably.
Dean and DeLuca. I have this like genuine, almost insatiable interest in trying to assemble the picture of a person that I will only be able to know like spiritually and intellectually, but that in a very peculiar way I feel incredibly close to nonetheless. Like, I feel like this is someone that I know deep down. And I've sometimes described it as a person that, so imagine that your friend, most of you, like, your parents, your siblings are not in this room, right? But like, you know, they're somewhere on this earth, or maybe not, but you know, not somewhere. That's kind of how I feel. I feel like he's like across the country somewhere, and like I'll see him sometime, even though I know that that's not exactly how it works. And so being able to connect with someone like you, Roger, especially given that I only recently have like opened this bundle of stories, of new stories from you, this new perspective that has, you know, changed the course of how I think about him, has been absolutely fascinating. I'm so grateful. I remember sitting at Canyon with you, and I remember, like, as soon as you left, I pulled out my notebook and I was writing for a full hour. I was writing for a full hour all these stories that you had just told me. So truly, I feel so blessed to be able to also have this relationship with you. Thank you so much.
Hey guys, thank you.